ABC Radio, your emergency broadcaster.
10 minutes away from 10 on your Wednesday morning. It's time to talk technology. Matthew Dickerson, a very good morning to you.
Hey, good morning. Nick, I wonder how we get some people like, say, Trump and some of those to listen to the Coronacast podcast and actually get some facts to wrap around some of the things that we hear around the world.
Look, I think with great difficulty, let's be honest there. Let's talk about reply all emails, because I think they've been the bane of many an office over the years. With people working from home, there might have been a few angry shouts happening in the hastily constructed home office. Microsoft reckons it's got an answer for them.
Well, they've got a bit of an answer for it. It's never going to be perfect. And actually, Microsoft had a very interesting experience themselves back in 97. They had 25,000 people on a distribution list which someone sent out and mistakenly put them in the to box. And of course, everyone said reply all, and they said, why am I on this list? And please take me off this list. And it ended up generating 15 million email messages, 195 gigs of data. It actually shut down Microsoft's own Exchange servers. So from that incident, they basically put a recipient limit in place, so you can't send to 25,000 people anymore, so that's good. But the new feature basically looks for activity. So when you've got too much activity, obviously people are doing reply all. So if you've got, for example, 10 reply all emails to over 5,000 recipients, so it's still a fairly large number in terms of the number that it'll do. If that happens within 60 minutes, then it will basically lock down your email system for 4 hours. So you just can't keep getting all these reply alls going out. Again, not perfect, so 5,000 is a fairly big number. Even if there's only 4,000 in there, it'll get past your system and still generate a fair bit of email. But again, what Microsoft's doing is trying to work out ways to stop it, because it doesn't matter how many times you tell people not to put a whole bunch of names in the to box. Humans still sometimes behave like humans and make mistakes no matter who they work for.
Look, there's always the person who has to respond to a reply all they shouldn't have got with, why am I on this list? And it's an avalanche from there. It snowballs, and it's always horrible.
That's right. It took them longer to say, why I'm on this list, than just hit the delete button and forget about it.
Look, let's talk about homeschooling after the Home Office. We know that there's a tracking technology that's trying to improve online learning for students.
And I actually thought about radio announcers when I saw this technology, because when you're on the radio, you're talking most of the time, or now definitely in the studio by yourself, and you're just not sure if anyone's definitely listening to you out there. I know, obviously, lots of listeners in the ABC, so you're okay, Nick. But it'd be great to have some direct feedback from your listeners to see whether they're interested in Tech Talk today or whatever you might be doing. So in a classroom environment, teachers aren't used to that. They're used to having people in front of them. They can see whether Johnny's chatting to Mary and whether they're passing notes and all those things that teachers are really good at spotting. But in the online environment, they're not as good because they're not trained for it. They're not used to it. So there's some technology that's being developed, and what it does is it actually looks at the student's eyes, it looks at their head to see which way their head's tilted, it looks at mouse and keyboard movements just to get an idea of the engagement level. But then what it does is it feeds back, say you've got a classroom of 30 kids, it feeds back all that information from the 30 kids, and then on the teachers monitor, they've actually got something like the worm in a political debate. They've got this engagement level. So as they're talking about things that might be more interest, the engagement level goes up. The teacher knows they're getting the student engaged. If it starts to drop down, they know they're starting to lose the kids that are sitting there remotely and they're starting to wander, their minds are wandering. So they need to try and change it or do something a bit different to try and get it back up. One of the things that's interesting is that some of the experts are talking about the number of students are going to be impacted negatively by remote learning, and they say about 46% of kids are going to have a worse experience for learning with this current remote environment. So anything we can do to try and get that engagement level up, I think, is really important.
You mentioned that it's real-time data. That's not easy to process so quickly. This is an impressive bit of technology.
Yeah, and look, it is in testing at the moment. They've had about 500 hours of content they've used to come up with the first iteration of this. Obviously, they're continuing to develop that further, but there's not a lot of data that's got to be transmitted. The video image that's being transmitted from each student's computer back to the classroom is a lot more data than the little tiny bit of data that has to be transferred back to, say, the engagement level. Obviously, the processing work is done at the student's PC and then the information sent back in a very small amount of data. But yeah, I think the whole idea of it is quite impressive.
And look, you did mention the mouse tracking, and I remember that was quite popular a few years back, with the idea being that we subconsciously hover our mouse over what we're paying attention to, whether we're going to click on it or not.
you've got to be careful what you do with everything, isn't it? There's all these signs being sent to people that are focusing on these things. So hovering over a certain thing, does that mean they've got a certain inclination? I mean, it's pretty scary.
Matthew Dickinson, let's head out to Singapore and talk about Spot the robot dog that is trying to help keep coronavirus at bay.
Well, I first remember seeing Boston Robotics with their dog back in about February 2018. There was a video that went around the world, and it was the first video where a robot could get through a door with a round door handle with some resistance from a human. So it was fantastic. It was really a breakthrough in robots and what they could do. And that was all cute and everything. Everyone thought that was fantastic. And then we started talking about how would this be used in the practical world. And there were various things put forward. No one said, hey, during a pandemic, you know what we could do? We could have this dog wander around a park in Singapore, keep an eye on people to make sure they're not gathering together, not too close together, and just give us some numbers on what's happening in a park. And that's exactly what's happening in Singapore at the moment. Only one park at this stage, only a 2-week trial, but they're basically using Spot the robot dog, to keep an eye on things. The Singaporean government is saying they're not videoing individuals or not tracking individuals in terms of the individual person. They're just doing it basing on numbers. So they're not going to go and book someone for being there too close together, but that may be down the track. But at the moment, it's really just trying to emphasise that social distancing.
I did hear someone describe it as sort of a loudspeaker on legs, this kind of quite odd robot to look at. Some people find it adorable, some people find it a little scary, but wandering up to groups and broadcasting a pre-recorded message, basically reminding people about distancing.
Yeah, that's right. And it's got built-in sensors and it's got a video there so it can detect how many people are there. So exactly right. And we've seen some other examples where drones, for example, have been used for the same type of thing, just to remind people that, hey, you shouldn't be so close together. Now, those drones have typically been flown by someone remotely, but Spot the robot dog basically can just be left in the park to wander around and keep an eye on people without having someone sit there and monitor it the whole time. Again, testing at the moment, but I can see this being rolled out, and I think some of the robotics that we've got now, I have no doubt at all that this will work very well.
And look, Boston Dynamics have been working on this for a while. I think the first time I heard about it would have been Big Dog or Alpha Dog, which was kind of the giant-sized version of Spot, and they've been working on that since about 2012.
Yeah, they've been at it for a while, and again, they've had all these ideas and applications. I'm sure they never thought about COVID-19 being an application, but I can see more and more dogs and robots used in a whole range of different ways, and this is just one of those interesting little ways. And if you were sitting in a park in Singapore, you'd probably find it quite cute for the dog to come along and walk past you until it started yelling at you and telling you to move along, sir.
Well, I think the big question, Matthew, is how long till they put a cattle prod in it?
That's right. There might be some issues going on there, but it'll certainly get people to move along.
Matthew Dickinson, we'll talk again in a fortnight. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nick.